Look at the highest echelons of Western corporate and economic life, and you'll find a significant footprint from the Indian and overwhelmingly Hindu diaspora. They represent roughly 1.2 billion people globally, and the immigrants they export have become some of the most highly educated and lowest crime demographics in the democratic world. Yet, major Western media outlets frequently frame this community through a lens of suspicion. Coverage often fixates on Hindu nationalism, caste oppression, and communal violence. Compare this to the treatment of Islam, a religion of 1.9 billion people. Even when specific communities face documented challenges with European integration or associations with global extremism, the press routinely adopts a protective, sympathetic framing focused on the fear of backlash. This creates a curious paradox of inverted victimhood, a system that appears to punish quiet success while rewarding perceived threat. The reality of global terrorism is a matter of public record. A transnational jihadist network driven by explicit supremacist doctrines has generated mass casualty events across the globe for decades. That extremism has spilled over into Europe, manifesting in localized violence, the exploitation of vulnerable girls by predominantly Muslim grooming gangs, and the growth of parallel societies where illiberal norms take root. When these events occur, newsrooms and politicians often obscure the ideological drivers. Perpetrators are labeled lone wolves or assigned mental health issues to avoid accusations of bigotry. The stark difference in how these two faiths are handled points to a deep misalignment between media priorities and physical reality, one that warrants a look at the data itself. This is a chart showing educational attainment and median household income among ethnic groups in the United States. Indian Americans, who are overwhelmingly Hindu, sit at the top. Around 70% hold bachelor's degrees or higher, doubling the national average of 35%. UK data tells a similar story. While making up roughly 1.5% of the total population, Hindus account for only 0.4% of the prison population. They show high rates of professional employment and virtually zero involvement in extremism. Now, look at this chart of data from the Global Terrorism Index. In recent years, affiliates of groups like the Islamic State, Al-Shabaab, and Boko Haram have been responsible for over 90% of terrorism deaths worldwide. To be clear, religious violence exists within Hinduism. India has faced sporadic communal riots and vigilante excesses. However, that violence lacks a doctrinal, transnational network of conquest and is significantly smaller in scale than the integration failures seen across Europe. Empirical reality contradicts the established media hierarchy of risk. This distortion is sustained by an academic framework built on an oppressor versus oppressed binary. Because Hindus are the majority in India, they are automatically categorized as the aggressor, while Muslim minorities in the West are afforded reflexive protection. In Europe, these theories overlap with political realities. Leaders often craft policy driven by post-colonial guilt while navigating the electoral influence of rapidly growing Muslim voting blocs. Free expression is further chilled by the threat of violent retaliation. Events like the Charlie Hebdo attacks created a lasting pressure on media outlets and publishers to soften their criticism out of self-preservation. Finally, Hinduism lacks an equivalent lobbying force. There is no Hinduphobia industrial complex, nor is there the oil wealth necessary to fund major Western universities or aggressively counter dominant narratives. These incentives converge to reward groups that pose a physical or political risk, while ignoring those that integrate without friction. The selective nature of Western human rights concerns becomes clear when we look at regions where Hindus are the minority. In neighboring Muslim-majority countries, they have faced demographic collapse. This graph tracks the Hindu population in Bangladesh. In 1951, they made up 22% of the country. After decades of persecution and forced conversions, that share has fallen below 8%. In the 1990s, the indigenous Kashmiri Pandits were ethnically cleansed from their homes by militant networks, resulting in a permanent forced exodus. These stories rarely receive sustained Western outrage. The human rights narrative appears to prioritize the protection of certain groups over the documented erasure of others. Media narratives directly inform immigration policy. Highly skilled Hindu immigrants face years of merit-based scrutiny and administrative hurdles, despite their record of seamless integration and economic contribution. At the same time, Western nations maintain large-scale, relatively open asylum pathways for regions with documented extremism risks, citing multiculturalism and historical guilt. The result is a measurable societal friction, parallel legal norms, higher welfare dependency, and the silencing of critics. Citizens who point out these trends are frequently met with professional and social smears. Downplaying real risks while maligning harmless communities erodes institutional trust. This gap between lived experience and official narrative is a primary driver of modern populist backlash. No faith is flawless. Caste discrimination remains a social ill across South Asian communities, and India experiences majoritarian excesses like any other large nation. But the facts are clear. The Hindu diaspora does not export civilizational violence, nor does it harbor global ambitions for a theocratic caliphate. Stable societies must judge cultures by their actual outcomes. Pretending all ideological strains are equally compatible with liberal democracy serves no one. Truth-seeking demands that Western democracies welcome immigrants based on compatibility and data, not on public relations.